Sly Stone, a name once electrified by funk, freedom, and fearless innovation. The man behind the music that shaped generations. He wasn't just a musician, he was a cultural architect, building bridges between genres, races, and social movements. But for decades, his name has lingered in the shadows of the very legacy he helped to create. And yet, in 2025, a new wave of recognition is emerging, not just for his music but for the visionary mind behind it. His story is one of brilliance, struggle, and redemption. A story that reflects the highs and lows of genius. From groundbreaking albums to personal demons, from historic stages to public silence, this is the story of why the world is finally calling Sly Stone the forgotten genius. Let's uncover his legacy. As the 1970s progressed, Sly became increasingly reclusive. Stories from this period paint a picture of a man struggling to navigate the churning waters of fame and creativity. He moved into a mansion in Beverly Hills, where he reportedly installed a studio in his bedroom so he could work at all hours of the night. But the mansion also became a fortress, a place where Sly could retreat from the outside world. Friends and collaborators would later describe the house as chaotic, a constant stream of people coming and going, fueled by late-night recording sessions and endless parties. It was during this time that drugs began to take a more prominent role in Sly's life. Cocaine, in particular, became a constant companion. While drug use was hardly uncommon in the music scene of the 1970s, for Sly, it became both a coping mechanism and a creative crutch. Some who worked with him during this period recalled that Sly's creativity seemed to burn even brighter under the influence, his mind racing with ideas, his instincts sharper than ever. But the drugs also brought paranoia and instability. Sly, once a charismatic and collaborative leader, became increasingly erratic and distrustful of those around him. The band itself began to feel the strain. Larry Graham, the bassist whose innovative slap bass technique had helped define the band's sound, clashed with Sly over creative and personal differences. Rumors swirled about heated arguments and even physical altercations between the two. The tension reached a breaking point, and Graham eventually left the band. His departure marked the beginning of the end for the original lineup of the family Stone. Despite the turmoil, Sly's genius continued to shine through in his music. In 1971, the band released There's a Riot Goin' On, an album that was unlike anything they, or anyone else, had ever created. Gone were the exuberant, uplifting anthems of their earlier work. In their place was a darker, more introspective sound. But Sly Stone's genius truly came into focus in 1966, when he formed Sly and the Family Stone. The band was unlike anything anyone had seen before. For one, it was racially integrated, a radical statement in an era where segregation still plagued America, not just socially but within the entertainment industry. Even more revolutionary, it featured both men and women. On bass was the powerhouse Larry Graham, whose thumping slap bass technique would go on to influence generations. On vocals and trumpet, Cynthia Robinson, a fiery and unapologetically bold black woman whose commanding stage presence shattered stereotypes. Sly's sister, Rose Stone, brought her gospel-trained voice to the keyboards, while drummer Greg Errico and saxophonist Jerry Martini rounded out the multicultural lineup. From the moment they stepped on stage, they were a phenomenon. Their early shows in San Francisco's burgeoning psychedelic scene were electric, leaving audiences stunned. Imagine walking into a club expecting another standard rock or R&B act, only to be hit with an explosion of sound that fused rock, soul, funk, and psychedelia into something entirely new. They weren't just playing music, they were creating a movement. And Sly was the enigmatic wizard at the center of it all. In 1967, the band released their first album, A Whole New Thing. While it didn't achieve major commercial success, critics recognized that something extraordinary was happening. By the time their second album, Dance to the Music, dropped in 1968, the world was starting to take notice. The title track became a smash hit, with its infectious energy and call to dance to the music serving as both an invitation and a command. It was a song that demanded movement, not just of feet but of minds and hearts. But Sly wasn't just about catchy hooks. He was a philosopher, using his music to preach messages of unity and equality. His lyrics tackled issues that were deeply personal and profoundly political. Take Everyday People, a song that became an anthem for the civil rights movement. With its simple yet powerful refrain, I am no better and neither are you, we are the same whatever we do, Sly delivered a message of radical equality with a groove so irresistible it climbed to the top of the charts. It wasn't just a hit, it was a rallying cry. The magic of Sly and the Family Stone wasn't just in their sound but in their very existence. In a time when America was deeply divided, here was a band that embodied the possibility of unity. They weren't just black or white. They weren't just men or women. They weren't just rock or soul. They were everything, all at once, a living, breathing example of what the world could be if people came together. Stories from their early tours have become the stuff of legend. In one instance, the band played a show in a small, predominantly white southern town. As they walked on stage, the audience, unsure what to make of this racially mixed group, responded with silence. But by the end of the first song, the crowd was on its feet, dancing and cheering. Sly had a way of breaking down barriers with his sheer presence. He didn't lecture the audience about racism, he showed them, through the power of his music, what a unified world could look and feel like. But Sly's vision wasn't limited to the stage. He was also a pioneer in the studio, revolutionizing the way music was recorded and produced. He wasn't afraid to experiment, layering sounds and textures in ways that hadn't been done before. His studio sessions were famously intense, with Sly pushing his bandmates, and himself, to the brink in pursuit of perfection. The result was music that felt alive, pulsing with energy and emotion. By 1969, Sly and the Family Stone were on fire. Their album, Stand, was a critical and commercial triumph, featuring hits like I Want to Take You Higher and Sing a Simple Song. They were booked to play at Woodstock, the legendary music festival that would define a generation. And when they took the stage at 3:30 a.m., they delivered a performance that has gone down in history as one of the greatest of all time. Under a moonlit sky, with tens of thousands of people swaying and singing along, Sly led the crowd in a call and response chant of I Want to Take You Higher. It was a moment of pure transcendence, a reminder of music's power to unite, uplift, and inspire. But even as Sly stood at the height of his powers, there was a sense of mystery about him. He was a man of contradictions, charismatic yet enigmatic, joyous yet introspective. Those who worked with him often described him as a perfectionist, a visionary who could see possibilities that others couldn't. But they also spoke of his intensity, his unpredictability, and the sense that he was carrying a weight that few could understand. In hindsight, it's clear that Sly's genius was both his gift and his burden. He wasn't just making music, he was creating an entirely new way of thinking about it. And in doing so, he was pushing both himself and his bandmates to their limits. But in those early years, as Sly and the Family Stone blazed their trail across the music world, the possibilities seemed endless. They weren't just a band, they were a revolution. By the mid-1970s, the Family Stone was unraveling. Sly's once vibrant presence on stage became sporadic, his performances tinged with unpredictability. His music, while still innovative, began to reflect his inner turmoil more than his earlier optimism. Albums like Fresh and Small Talk contained flashes of brilliance but lacked the cohesive vision of his earlier work. Fans and critics alike began to wonder, was Sly losing his touch, or was he simply retreating further into his own world? The answer, as always with Sly, was complicated. He was still creating, still innovating, but the toll of fame, drugs, and personal demons was becoming impossible to ignore. His genius was still there, but it was buried under layers of haze and heartbreak. Looking back, this period of Sly's life feels both tragic and inevitable. He was a man who had given everything to his music, who had poured his soul into creating something that could unite people across divides. But the very qualities that made him a genius, his perfectionism, his vision, his relentless drive, also made him vulnerable. The highs of success had lifted him to unimaginable heights, but the haze that followed threatened to bring him crashing down. And yet, even in the darkest moments, Sly's music continued to resonate. His songs weren't just hits, they were lifelines. For those who listened, they offered a reminder that even in the face of chaos and despair, there was still beauty, still truth, still a reason to believe. Sly Stone, despite everything, was still taking us higher. For those who knew Sly personally, his disappearance was as much about self-preservation as it was about withdrawal. Sly had always been a deeply private person, despite his larger-than-life persona on stage. As fame took its toll, retreating from the public eye became a way to protect himself from the relentless demands of the music industry and the pressure to live up to his own legend. But this silence also created a sense of mystery that only deepened his mythos. Fans and journalists alike were left to piece together fragments of his life, creating a portrait of a man who was both present and absent, visible and invisible. During this period of silence, Sly continued to create music, albeit quietly and without the fanfare that had once surrounded his releases. He recorded sporadically, often working alone or with close friends. The music he created during this time was raw and deeply personal, reflecting his struggles and his refusal to give up on his art. While these recordings never achieved mainstream success, they offered a glimpse into the mind of a man who, despite his fall from the spotlight, was still driven by the same passion that had defined his career. One of the most poignant moments of Sly's re-emergence came in the form of a lawsuit. In 2015, Sly won a $5 million settlement against his former manager and business associates, whom he accused of withholding royalties owed to him for decades. The case highlighted the darker side of the music industry, where artists are often exploited and left to fend for themselves once their star begins to fade. For Sly, the lawsuit wasn't just about money, it was about reclaiming his legacy and getting the recognition he deserved. The silence that surrounded Sly during these years was deafening, but it also gave his story an almost mythical quality. He became a symbol of both the brilliance and the tragedy of genius, a man whose music had changed the world but who had paid an enormous price for his creativity. In his absence, his legend grew, with fans and critics revisiting his work and rediscovering the impact he had on music and culture. Looking back, Sly's disappearance wasn't just about retreat, it was about survival. For a man who had given so much of himself to the world, stepping away was perhaps the only way to preserve what was left. And yet, even in his silence, his presence could still be felt. His music continued to inspire new generations of artists, and his influence could be heard in everything from hip-hop to modern funk to experimental pop. Though Sly may have disappeared from the public eye, his genius never truly left. It lingered in the grooves of his records, in the memories of those who had seen him perform, and in the artists who carried his legacy forward. Sly Stone may have stepped into the shadows, but his light had not gone out, it was simply waiting to be rediscovered. One of the most persistent and heartbreaking rumors was that Sly had become homeless, living out of a van in Los Angeles. Decades after being one of the most celebrated musicians in the world, it was said that he was now barely surviving, a shadow of his former self. In 2011, a New York Post article brought these rumors to the forefront, claiming that Sly was living in a camper van parked in a rough neighborhood in L.A. The story shocked fans, many of whom struggled to reconcile the image of the funk pioneer with that of a man seemingly abandoned by the world he had helped to shape. But as with much of Sly's life, the truth was more complicated. In interviews, Sly downplayed the narrative of homelessness, insisting that he was still creating music, albeit on his own terms. He spoke of the camper as a choice, a way to escape the pressures of the world and focus on his art. "I like my little camper," he said in one rare interview. "It's where I can think." Whether this was true or a defense mechanism, it offered a glimpse into the mind of a man who had always defied expectations, even in his decline. Occasionally, Sly would re-emerge, offering tantalizing glimpses of the genius that had once captivated millions. In 2006, he made a surprise appearance at the Grammy Awards, where he performed a medley of his hits alongside a star-studded lineup of artists. The performance was both triumphant and bittersweet. Sly, with his platinum mohawk and signature swagger, still had the charisma that had made him a star, but it was clear that time and struggle had taken their toll. He left the stage abruptly, leaving fans wondering if the old Sly was truly gone. Again, in 2012, Sly appeared at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame anniversary concert, performing alongside some of the biggest names in the industry. The crowd erupted in cheers, a testament to the enduring love for his music and legacy. But once again, his appearance was fleeting, and he soon retreated into the shadows. The album was a masterpiece of mood and texture, with songs like Family Affair and You Caught Me, Smilin' offering glimpses into Sly's fractured psyche. The production was groundbreaking, with Sly using overdubs, drum machines, and tape loops to create a dense, almost claustrophobic atmosphere. The album felt like a reflection of the times, haunted by the disillusionment of the post-1960s era, but still pulsing with a quiet resistance. The title of the album itself was a statement. There's a Riot Goin' On was originally conceived as a response to Marvin Gaye's What's Going On, another seminal album of the era. But where Gaye's album offered a hopeful, spiritual call for change, Sly's was more ambiguous. There was no actual riot on the album, just a long stretch of silence in the title track. It was as if Sly was saying, "The riot is inside me, and I don't have the answers." The album was a commercial and critical success, reaching #1 on the Billboard charts and earning widespread acclaim. But it also marked a turning point for Sly. The darkness that permeated the album wasn't just artistic, it was personal. By this time, Sly's drug use and erratic behavior were becoming impossible to ignore. He missed shows, arrived late to recording sessions, and became increasingly isolated from his bandmates and collaborators. One infamous story from this period involves Sly's performance at Madison Square Garden in the early 1970s. Fans packed the arena, eager to see the man who had redefined funk and soul. But Sly, caught in the throes of his personal struggles, failed to show up on time. Hours passed, and the restless crowd began to boo and throw objects onto the stage. When Sly finally arrived, he performed a truncated set before abruptly leaving. The incident was a stark reminder that, for all his brilliance, Sly was fighting battles that the public couldn't see.
Sly Stone is not just a forgotten genius, he's a buried treasure, finally unearthed. His music shaped eras, his vision built bridges, and his truth, though painful, inspired millions. In 2025, we remember, we recognize, we celebrate, because genius, no matter how obscured by time, never truly dies. It waits, patiently, for the world to catch up. Which Sly Stone song speaks to you the most? Subscribe for more soul-deep artist stories. Thanks for watching.